Hey guys, this is Jan for Chess24, final round of the Sinquefield Cup. As game of the day, I have chosen the one with the biggest impact on the standings, the game by tournament leader Levon Aronian with the black pieces against former world champion Veselin Topalov. Levon Aronian 1 point ahead of the pack before the final round, which means if he does not lose this game with black against Topalov, he does win the tournament outright. Let's have a look at the players. Here we get a picture. I don't know, that's not really a picture now that I have a closer look. Veselin Topalov with white against Levon Aronian with black. This is a photo. There we got Topalov opening with 1d4 as we can see. Topalov did not have his best tournament, is at 50% before this last game. But sometimes it's pleasant if you're playing an opponent and you know he only needs a draw to clinch victory. You can take some risk because you feel like you can fall back on that draw. And Topalov, of course, always fights with the white pieces, doesn't have to be told twice. Goes for d4, c4. Aronian sticks to his guns. Well, not exclusively, but he does prefer setups with knight f6, e6 and d5 in one order or the other. Topalov goes knight to f3, d5 and knight to c3. Here, Aronian's repertoire has shifted a bit over the years. He used to be a semi-Slav player, played e6, then he played a bit of bishop to e7. He's also played quite a bit of d takes c4 in this position, the Vienna, and recently he's preferred the move bishop to b4, the so-called Ragozin. Ragozin very fashionable at top level. All the top guys are playing it. White has two main tries. One is c takes d5, and after e takes d5, bishop to g5. Here Aronian has his own little specialty, the line knight bd7, e3 and h6, bishop h4, g5, bishop g3 and knight to e4, which hasn't always served him well. He lost a crucial game in Norway chess to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, I believe in the first round Norway chess, the first leg of the Grand Chess Tour super tournament that Veselin Topalov won and where Levon Aronian did terribly. In that same tournament, Veselin Topalov, instead of testing Levon in that line, played bishop g5 against him and also won the game after h6, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6. Topalov played queen a4 check, knight to c6 and e3, reaching a slow position where he went on to outplay Levon. Levon didn't seem satisfied with the results of the opening there, and already during Norway chess he changed his opening play and went for the move d takes c4 against Anish Giri. D takes c4 is a transposition to the Vienna, which I just mentioned. The main line after d takes c4 is the move e4, and this leads to very sharp play after c5, bishop takes c4, c takes d, knight takes d4, bishop c3 check, b takes c, queen a5, bishop b5 check, knight bd7. Bit of a pet line of mine as well, so stay tuned for more info there soon. I believe that black is doing quite alright here. So that's what happened in the game after bishop g5, d takes c4 was played. And the question arises, or did arise for me, if Levon does like the Vienna, why doesn't he go for the normal move order with d takes c4 when white could go e3, but that's not very scary. e4 is the critical move, and now bishop to b4. Bishop g5 would transpose to the position we could have had in the game, but here white has an extra option, bishop takes c4, a pawn sacrifice, which is pretty dangerous. Aronian has played it with white himself, knight takes e4 and short castles. I believe that black is okay here as well, but Aronian seems to believe that he wants to avoid that line and he prefers the position after bishop b4, cd5 to allow that one, and only against bishop g5 to transpose into the Vienna, than to allow this pawn sacrifice, which I just showed. So some interesting opening nuances there. Always tricky to see how chess theory develops here. Topalov didn't seem to want to contribute to theory development with e4, the main and critical move here, but I prepared a sideline for this game, the move queen a4 check in this position. Knight c6 is forced to protect the bishop, and Topalov's idea was to play the move a3 here, forcing this bishop to capture on c3. If it were to retreat, white would just pick up the c4 pawn with a better position. So this is forced, b takes c3. Now, once again, if white were allowed to take on c4, he'd be better. But the reason this line is not so popular is that it's really a gambit line. Black can defend his pawn on c4 with the move queen to d5. In order to justify his pawn sacrifice, white has to take on f6, destroy the black pawn structure a little bit, g takes f6, and now try to create compensation, either because the white-black king is still in the center or doesn't find very safe shelter on the king side, or by targeting the c4 pawn and provoking some weaknesses on the queen side for black, which could, in result, lead to some weakened squares. Still, a pawn is a pawn, and I do not believe that this line is very scary. Veselin Topalov chose the move knight to d2 here. That's a sideline within the sideline. The move they play more often is the move queen to c2, preparing e4. But even here, after f5 to stop e4, white normally goes g3, black goes b6, bishop to g2, bishop to b7. I believe that black is totally fine, and it's for a reason that we don't see this line that often. Topalov had prepared the move knight to d2. Black only has one move, he has to go b5 to defend his pawn, queen to c2. And here, the first bad news for Topalov was not so much the move, but the fact that Aronian blitzed out this move a6, clearly showing that he was in book, knowing what he was doing and comfortable with the position. Normally, if you prepare a sideline like that, you really hope that you surprise your opponent and make him think for a bit longer. No such luck here. The idea of a6 is simple, just reinforcing the pawn chain. Black wants to go bishop b7, and then, yeah, probably retreat the queen after e4, move this knight out of the way. I know all this because all these moves happen in the game, and then decide where to put his king. Most likely on the king side, but in some lines you could imagine even queenside castling. e4, pushing the queen away, logical, queen d7, bishop, no, sorry, not bishop. g3, and only the move g3 is a novelty here. f4 was played in an old game between Alexandria and Litinskaya in the year 1988. I had to look that up, I did not know that game, but f4 does seem a little overzealous. Thereafter bishop b7 followed by knight e7 and f5. Black got a very good position and went on to win the game. Topalov's move is stronger, g3, preparing to put the bishop on the long diagonal, then castle kingside, develop all his pieces harmoniously, counting on the fact that he has enough compensation for the pawn due to a strong center, slightly weakened black king, and the potential option to attack the black queen side. Still, it doesn't sound that impressive, and that's because it's not. And after bishop b7, bishop to g2, and knight to e7, another precise move, I believe Aronian at the very least has solved his opening problems and has no worries whatsoever. Topalov said after the game it felt like it was Aronian who prepared that line in the morning and not himself, referring to the confident handling of Aronian's opening. That sentence makes sense. I think you get what I'm trying to say. 97, good move, preparing c5, getting out of potential problems with e5, followed by knight e4, by freeing his bishop on this long diagonal. Short castles, what else? Short castles. Aronian could even have thought about the move c5 here immediately, here and on the next move. I believe he probably disliked the option for white to go d5. I'm not sure if that's sound to sacrifice another pawn, but it does look a little scary. Knight takes, knight to e4. Or bishop takes is probably better. Knight to e4. It seems like black is alright here after queen c6, but it does look a little scary to open the position like that with your king in the center, if all you need is a draw. That's why Aronian preferred the move short castles, and Topalov realized probably that he doesn't have any direct ways to attack, like a move like f4 would still backfire at black, would just go c5, and all white accomplished is to weaken his own king, so you don't want to do that. Topalov played more strongly, more calmly, went rook fd1, trying to reinforce his center and putting his rook opposite the enemy queen, which tends to be a good idea. Rook a8, Aronian also prepares for battle on the d-file. c5 was once again possible when probably white had nothing better than to play knight f3, which is very similar to the game. But this might have been a stronger move than rook a8 in fairness, because it's not clear the rook is always needed on d8. a4, a Good reaction to rook 88, because now that this rook has abandoned the a file, white wants to activate his own rook either with a takes b and rook a7, or sometimes with a takes b and rook b1, creating a bit of counterplay against the b5 pawn. So this is a good move. And finally Aronian does go for c5, the typical counter blow in the center. The point is that if white takes this pawn, he's not going to enjoy it for very long. Queen c7 or queen c6. And you can't hang on to your c5 pawn. Black is just better. Queen takes c5 next move. And this rook would now be perfectly placed along the d file. So Topalov had to go for the move. Oh, I'm sorry. He first took on b5, which makes sense. A, and now he went for the move knight to f3, keeping the tension. And somehow he has managed, by playing natural moves, to create barely, but I believe enough compensation for the pawn. If anybody's better, it's black here, but it's not so easy to prove that over the board. For example, after c takes d4, white would go knight takes d4. Now he's threatening to target this pawn and some knight jumps. Computer gives the move e5, then knight to f5, queen to c7, and knight to e3. And with these weakened light squares around the black king, it's very hard to believe that black could be better here. Therefore, Levon Aronian plays the move queen c7, which is more natural, just stepping out of the d file. And once again, the onus is on Topalov to create something. He also has to reckon with b4 now that the queen is on c7, protecting the c4 pawn from a distance. b4 with the idea c takes b, and c4 is covered now is a threat. So Topalov reacts to that, goes for rook ab1. Rook db1 was an interesting alternative, keeping this rook active on the a file. Topalov plays rook ab1, and Aronian decides to now force the issue with the move f5, which is a very good move, and he does not have any problems after that. He could have, maybe would have in a different tournament situation, kept the tension and play a move like rook to b8, for example, tricky move, tending rook takes b5, bishop takes e4, thereby indirectly defending the b5 pawn. But objectively, I'm also not sure that black can be better here. D takes c5, for example, now makes more sense. Queen takes c5, knight d4, attacking this pawn. Bishop is to move to protect it. And a move like queen d2 or queen c1, planning to go to the king's side. And it does look like barely, but the weakened black king should provide enough compensation for the pawn. So Aronian played f5, opening up the position and asking some tricky questions once again. Topalov chooses the most natural way to play. He first takes on f5, then takes on b5, wins his pawn back and simplifies things a bit. There was one very interesting alternative, the quiet, very deep move, queen to e2. Of course, it's a computer move. The point is that after bishop takes e4, all of a sudden white launches an attack on the king's side with knight to g5. And it turns out the attack is not winning, but it is good enough for at least an equal position. After queen h5, queen h7, checkmate is threatened. The only way to escape is king g7, queen h7, king f6. But white keeps giving checks, wins his material back by force. Queen h6, knight g6, knight h7, king e7, queen g5, king d7, knight f8, let's say rook f8, and rook takes b1. When I'm bad at counting, I guess we have equal pawns now, and the black king is a bit exposed, but black does have this very powerful passed c pawn, which makes it very hard to believe that white could be better here after, well, knight e7 is a move, queen d8 is a move. Position is still roughly balanced. If this is too adventurous for black, he also could go for f takes e4, knight to g5 and h6. And after knight takes e4, we once again get a situation where probably bishop e4 is sound choice here. Black has an extra pawn, but his king is weakened enough in combination with the queen side that white has full compensation for it. No such adventures happened. E takes f5 was played, knight takes f5 and rook takes b5, simplifying the position. But white is not out of the woods yet, because black has bishop takes f3, and c takes d4. And once again, black is a pawn up, and white is to show he has compensation for it. My first thought when watching the game was that white should go rook takes f5. Get rid of this knight, ef, queen f5, threatening at least a perpetual with queen g5, queen f6. Some ideas to go bishop e4 as well. When I had the feeling that white should have enough for the exchange, but after looking at it a bit, turns out black has a strong move, queen b6, preparing queen to g6 if needed. C takes d, let's say queen g6. And white might survive this, but I'd certainly take black. Because, yeah, there's only one pawn for the exchange. The rooks are good in these positions. C-pawn is strong. So white should not go for this unless he really has to. And Topalov found an alternative, which is very strong. A quiet move, but a very nice move. The move queen to c1. Preparing to bring the queen to g5 immediately, or after rook takes f5, the immediate threat. Well, in an equalizing sense is rook takes f5 followed by queen g5 and queen f6 with a perpetual. Now Levon Aronian, as mentioned, only needed a draw to win the tournament, and therefore his decision here probably wasn't too difficult for him. He went for the move d takes c3, which allows this perpetual. But I was curious if black had a way to avoid it, and if black was better in this position. I checked some options, but I could not find a way. So maybe Topalov did manage to keep the balance by defending quite precisely after the opening went a little wrong. I was trying to move king h8, just sidestepping this check on g5. Now queen g5 makes no sense because of f6. But after king h8, white manages to stay in the game with a series of very precise moves. C takes d, let's say knight takes d4, rook takes d4, little sacrifice, rook takes d4, queen to h6, this was the idea, hitting the f8 rook and threatening queen f6 check. The only way to cover these things is queen to e7 or queen d8, which transposes. Now rook to b7, chasing the queen away from e7, queen to d8, and the final point, rook to b8, giving up this rook, and after queen takes b8, queen f6 check, king g8, queen g5. Black cannot escape the perpetual. You're probably less excited about drawing combinations than I am, but I did think it was a nice line, and it does show that Topalov did have enough compensation for the pawn. Barely, but there seems to be no way for black to be better here. Queen e7 is another move that comes to mind, covering the g5 square, but then white has another powerful, very calm move, bishop e4, just attacking this knight, and it turns out the knight can't really move because of bishop takes h7 check, king h7, rook h5. And all of a sudden white has a winning attack because of queen h6. Next move is going to be checkmate. So Aronian could not really avoid, well, he could avoid the perpetual, but there was no way to be better. One last line, h6. I'm really a fan of drawing combinations. I probably shouldn't be, but this is the last line I'm going to show you. cd, knight d4, rook d4, rook g5 check. Once again, forcing a draw. If this rook is taken, hg, queen g5, king h7, queen h5 is a perpetual. And if the rook is not taken, then black even loses. Rook h5, knight takes f3, and the precise move king f1. And there's nothing black can do about queen takes h6, checkmating him. Knight h2 or knight d2 or knight g5. Only delay that. Still, of course, all of these lines remained behind the scenes because Levon Aronian chose d takes c3. And here, after rook takes f5, rook takes d1, bishop takes d1, e takes f5, the conclusion of the game was very near. Let's see if we can find some video on it. This might take a second, but I am optimistic I can bring it up. Here we are, Topalov giving checks on g5, on f6, and on g5 again. There's no draw allowed before move 30, so the players repeat the position 3 times. Aronian still all business, but he's not really thinking about his moves, of course. And here after queen g5, they reach the position 3 times, and therefore a draw is agreed. Levon Aronian wins the Sinquefield Cup outright. You can see a little smile on his face there. Let's just show the final moves. Queen g5 check, king h8, queen f6, king g8, queen g5, king h8, and so on. And draw agreed. Not the most exciting of games, but it's always interesting, to me at least, how both sides approach such situations where the black player only needs a draw. But Levon Aronian got it very comfortably, was well prepared in the opening, was not surprised at all by Topalov's choice, and it felt like Topalov was the one fighting for the honor of drawing Levon Aronian in this tournament. Aronian wins the tournament. Here we see the final standings, full point ahead of the pack with 6 out of 9, while a lot of players were tied second with 5 out of 9. Personally, I'm quite happy to see this result because Levon Aronian's had a very tough 1.5 years, lost about 60-70 rating points, fell from clear number 2 in the world to out of the top 10 in number 11. Magnus Carlsen was teasing him that now they can work with each other because Carlsen considers it wrong to work with people in the top 10, but Aronian was out of it. No longer, he's back to the top 10, won around 20 rating points in the Sinquefield Cup, and he's such a creative force and strong chess player that I think it's just good for the chess world to have him back on good form. So congratulations, Levon Aronian. That's the end of the Sinquefield Cup. Thank you guys for watching my videos. I'll see you on Chess 24. Until next time, bye bye.